Hey everybody, I'm Jason Johnson from Fuzzlord Effects, and you are listening to the Fuzz Life podcast. In this episode, we're sitting down to talk to Steve Reis from Does It Doom. And if you're not familiar with Steve, he runs a YouTube channel, an Instagram page, a Facebook account, Twitter, TikTok, and about everything in between you can think of. And he does a lot of gear demos and guitar lessons made specifically for folks interested in doom metal, stoner metal, drone, sludge, and every kind of like heavy music genre you can think of. So if you're not familiar with him, I really recommend that you check out his YouTube channel, Does It Doom, or his new podcast under the same name that's on iTunes and Spotify. So without going too much more about Steve, let's just get this interview going so he can tell you more about himself. Steve, I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down and talk with us all.
Hey, Jason. Really appreciate you having me, man. I've certainly become a big fan of your podcast and really excited to be back on the show again today.
I really appreciate it, man. So for the folks out there listening today that may not be familiar with who you are, can you just give us a little rundown about what it is you do and then give us the quick comic book issue number one of kind of like how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, so I run a account called Does It Doom on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, etc., all of the social media major platforms where I do gear demos and song lessons focused on the stoner, doom, sludge, and drone metal genres. I've been doing it now for just over a year, and like to produce content related to the genres on a weekly basis across all the platforms, longer form content on YouTube and shorter form content on all the various additional platforms. But it's been a lot of fun, and I'm hoping to expand on things next year, and really just looking forward to continuing to provide great content here related to the music that I love.
You know, I really appreciate all these lessons and stuff you do because we're a similar age, man. I think we both grew up playing guitar before video lessons were a thing. And I started playing guitar right when guitar tabs were just starting to kind of come out. So it's really cool to see how much you're making for folks as far as like how much info there is available now to like people just getting into guitar. I mean, you do really good lessons, and something I really appreciate is how you break down like Black Sabbath songs, for example, that maybe have been out there a lot, but they were always had mistakes in the tablature or the lesson.
Yeah, man. So I would assume, like you're saying, we got into guitar in the very early internet age, probably before there was a whole lot of information out there. But we did probably also grow up through it as tabs started to show up online before video was a thing, certainly. And obviously, you've always been able to get tabs from guitar magazines, but not necessarily the exact songs you were looking to learn. And obviously, as the internet came online, it started to become possible to find some tabs that people had created online. And I used a lot of that stuff as a kid, obviously, just to learn simple songs. If we were learning the Misfits or learning Black Sabbath, we would try to print off tabs. I mean, this is in the very early days of myself playing guitar, and learn as much by ear as we could. But obviously, as the years went on, you started to see things like YouTube blow up and just lesson platform websites and video lessons. And it was those models that I sort of took to, and that's when my guitar playing really exploded, was when I started being able to take these online video courses. And then as time progressed, I started to think that I would like to teach, I guess, this genre of music that I'd been listening to for so long, and just by listening to it and playing it in various forms, learned a lot about it myself. And with that, I felt like YouTube was an excellent platform to get going with that sort of thing, developing lessons and producing lessons on a weekly basis. And so that's kind of how I got rolling, and people latched onto the lessons a bit. And then I started to get a lot of requests to demo gear, and I jumped into that arena as well. And that's been a lot of fun also. So yeah, sounds like we probably got into things very similarly. And that's kind of how I got to the point where I'm at today.
So speaking of your lessons and especially about how accurate they are, Can you give everybody a little info about how you figure out these songs? Like some of these High on Fire songs, for example, are not easy to play. They're very technical. So I'm curious to know, how is it that you figure these things out?
Yeah, Matt's playing is certainly difficult, and I'm always intimidated to undertake any of his especially recent work, whether it be Sleep or any High on Fire for that matter, starting from the beginning with the Art of Self-Defense. So I will typically reference online video to figure out the song. Obviously, I'm using my ears, but I'm also using my eyes, and I'm making sure my guitar is in the correct band tuning that the band is actually using when they play. So for High on Fire, you're playing in C standard tuning, and I will make sure my guitar is in that tuning, strung up with the appropriate gauge of strings and with the appropriate setup. And then I will watch videos for the songs if I can and science out what exactly Matt is doing when he's playing. Again, just using my ears to listen, to play along, but also watching for the hand positions and the chord positions. And he's doing a lot of tricky stuff and a lot of fast things. So sometimes it's more difficult than others, but typically a challenge when learning a High on Fire song. But I do that. That's the same approach I take to learning any song. And really, the reason it's important to me is because I feel like it will help people in their own playing if they're doing things in a way that makes sense. With a lot of these online tabs that have been produced over the years, where people are generally just producing them from ear, they'll either be in the wrong tuning, oftentimes really in the wrong tuning, or they'll just be positionally incorrect on the guitar, where things are being played is nowhere near where they're actually being played on the neck. And that can make for a lot of awkward playing that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So it's very important to me to get those things correct and convey them in a correct manner so that people can really learn and take from those lessons and either play the songs with their buddies and play covers, or just play them by themselves in their room and get satisfaction out of knowing they're doing it correctly, or to really take the techniques that they're seeing or the scales and chords that they're seeing and transform them into their own songs. And that's kind of why I do it that way.
I think it's badass the way you do it, man. And your most recent Black Sabbath lesson doing the Sweet Leaf song, I think, was a perfect example about how being in the correct tuning, the right gauge of strings, and then actually playing the chords the same way that the artist played it, where that really makes the song sound the correct way.
Yeah, that was a really fun one. There's just a lot of songs, I'd learned Sweet Leaf as a kid for sure, and I definitely played it wrong, And I'd say most of us who've learned it from a guitar magazine or a tab over the years have probably at one time or another, at least in the older days, probably played it in the wrong tuning or in the complete wrong position. But with all this online video available now from the several Black Sabbath reunion tours, for example, I was able to get some really great reference footage of what Tony was doing, and really helped me figure out some of the sections that I'd never played correctly. It's not like I figured this out a year ago. With this particular song, I had been thinking about teaching it for a while, so I had been looking at it over the past few months. But like that bridge section where you're playing the open D chord shape and sliding it up and hitting the open sixth string or whatever, like that's a very intricate part that I would wager has not been transcribed correctly in the vast majority of tabs or lessons produced for that song. And so it was really fun to be able to produce it in such a way that I think people could see what Tony was actually doing. And if you go check out video footage of him playing that song, I'd say you'll find that it was, it's extremely true to form from start to finish in terms of how he plays the song live these days.
And aren't you also slowing down the speed of these videos so you can really analyze what's going on?
Yeah, I do that often. YouTube has a slowdown feature that many people don't know about. You kind of just click the little gear in the bottom right-hand corner of the video, and it'll let you adjust the speed. It'll let you speed it up, or it'll let you slow it down. So oftentimes I'm slowing it down to half speed or three-quarter speed and really trying to watch what the artist is doing. And thankfully, with the way technology is advanced, there's a pitch correction involved. So it maintains pitch even though it changes the speed, which is really an incredible feature. And the pitch correction stuff started to come online a few years back, probably, in the digital form, not with video necessarily, but with audio. And that was even a game changer for me, talking 6, 7, 8 years ago when that stuff started to come online. But as it got integrated into the YouTube stuff, it's just been incredible and was one of the things that really inspired me to start the lessons. If I look back, was the ability to know that I was teaching and learning and teaching these songs in the way they were actually played. It's just something that's very important to me. It's kind of a quirk. I don't know if it's as important to anyone else, but it's paramount to me.
Man, by how much your audience has grown over the last year. I remember when we started talking in the beginning of the year, it's a couple thousand followers on Instagram and YouTube, and now I think you're 14 or 15,000. So I think obviously people really do appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm really happy. I'm really thankful that anybody wants to check it out, and I'm really excited with how things have grown and how the genre's grown. Listening to this stuff 15, 20 years ago, it just seemed so small, and now with the way social media works and the size of the internet, it seems much bigger. So I don't know if the genre itself has exploded, and I know it has to a certain degree as a result of social media. But it's just really cool to see these communities and build these communities and interact with people on a daily basis. And it really keeps me motivated and inspired to keep producing this content.
There was one day where it just all clicked that what you were doing was really having a positive impact on some people. I know you'll remember this post. There was a young teenager on Instagram that had posted a video clip of playing a Behringer SF 300 Hyperfuzz clone pedal, and they were playing some Electric Wizard songs that they had learned from your lesson, and they got that pedal because you did a demo on it and kind of showed people that there was a cheap alternative out there that's good. And I think you know exactly who I'm talking about, and that was the day when I was like, man, everything Steve's doing is really having a positive impact on people.
Yeah, man, I really hope so. I think back to when I was a kid and how little information or guidance was out there. And the world has changed so dramatically, and so much information is out there now. But there was still a void within this genre where there wasn't a ton of well-produced guidance and lessons. And I thought, it would be exciting to try and fill that void and try and, when I see that instance with that kid playing that stuff, I look back and think like, that kind of would have been me. Like it definitely would have been me.
Same here.
If this stuff was available,
yeah.
I kind of try to produce those lessons as if I was producing them for myself. And maybe that's part of it. If I was learning a song, I'd want to know that I was being taught it correctly. But in a large part, I'm definitely, I picture that kid that was me, and I want to produce the best content I can for them so that they can learn this stuff in a way that makes sense. And so that's what I'm after.
So speaking of like when me or you were younger and about that age, learning how to play guitar and stuff, I was talking to you a couple weeks back about a talent show that you did as a teenager, and you played a cover song of a band you really liked. You know what I'm talking about?
Do not.
I believe you were telling me a couple weeks back that you did a talent show where you and your buddies did a Misfit song cover at the school, right?
Oh yeah. It wasn't really a talent show. Like we would do we would just play. I think it was some local event, but all the high school kids went.
Okay, cool. I see the videos of younger folks playing and following your lessons and stuff. Then I think of stories like that to where, what you were like at that age, wearing your Misfits t-shirt and stuff and rocking out.
Yeah, man. I mean, we were just huge into Misfits. Sam Hain, Danzig, that whole thing was really the inspiration to start a band and really pick up guitar again, because I had played a little bit, but once this group of friends that I had got into, we were just so heavy into that stuff, and it was just like, well, let's start a band. You kind of know how to play guitar, and my other buddy kind of knew how to play drums, and it was just a close group of friends. It was like, okay, well, I'm going to teach you how to play bass from the little I know of guitar, and you're going to sing, and so we would skip school all the time, and go home and just spend the entire afternoon just jamming in whoever's parents' basement was letting us play, or whoever's garage or whatever. I mean, we were definitely those kids,
That's really awesome, man. It is also really awesome to be able to appreciate kind of pre and post internet and like the whole YouTube thing as far as how much information is available to us today to teach ourselves pretty much anything, and check out channels like the Does It Doom YouTube channel to get lessons on all of our favorite songs. Like, this is just so much different than when folks our age were young teenagers.
Yeah, it's incredible. And I took full advantage of it. I feel like my playing truly exploded in the internet era. Once exploded is a funny term, right? But I advanced tremendously once I got access to large amounts of video lessons. That's when my playing certainly took a major step forward.
So I'm thinking about how many different guitar demos you've done this year, and all these cool brands and companies that like a bunch of us maybe wouldn't have been able to see before because they're not always stuff that's like available at Guitar Center. So I really like your channel to be able to check out all these different pedals, and you do these like shootouts between like the Behringer copy of a Hyper Fuzz and then the Boss FC2 that's worth a couple $100. And it's really been cool to see that there's different options out there. So I was thinking earlier, if you were talking to like the teenage version of yourself, or like someone on Instagram that's just getting into guitar and pedals specifically, of all these pedals you played this year, can you think of maybe like 3 top pedals that would be like awesome for a beginner to have, or like things that everyone would like on their pedal board? And it doesn't necessarily have to be expensive. They can be Behringer pedals, but just kind of like 3 pedals you think anybody into like doom or like sludge or drone music might have fun playing.
Yeah, I guess my head always goes to the dirt direction when I'm thinking that sort of thing. And there's just great options out there that are really bargain priced, especially if you're willing to shop on Reverb and eBay or your local Craigslist ad. I deter people in general from buying brand new stuff in a lot of ways, especially if they're budget conscious,
Yeah.
But, I wouldn't hesitate to get the Rat reissue or the reissue of any of the big muffs that EHX has put out. Obviously, Behringer's has some really cool pedals that are super cheap and sound really great. You've got my demos out there, but other guys, JHS did a really cool demo showing off all the Behringer pedals relative, or many of them relative to the pedal they're cloned after, and they just sound great. So I'm usually telling people, hunt down Behringer SF300 Super Fuzz, $25. Obviously, the price has gone up, but I picked up one for $25 a few weeks ago, brand new. So it just depends on catching the stock. But you're always going to be able to find a Rat reissue, and used, again, you're going to find those for probably $50 used, a Rat reissue. Any of these EHX muff reissues, when they're used, are probably going to be $50 to $60. So, I mean, they're classics, and they sound just like the vintage pedals they're modeled after.
They sure do, and I think it's awesome to check out your videos to kind of, a lot of us read forums too much, and then we buy into all the hype that you have to have the 1992 whatever font, big muff. So it's really cool to see stuff like the videos you're making where we can, realize that we don't have to break the bank just to sound like one of our favorite musicians, for example.
No, I mean, and I'm a geek, music gear nerd just as much as anyone, and I love all that shit, just like we all do. But if I take my Electro Harmonix op amp big muff reissue and run it side by side with my 79 op amp big muff, they fucking sound the same. I mean, they sound I can't tell the difference. I mean, I about as close as you can get, and I paid probably $50 for the reissue used, maybe 45 compared to who knows, probably something in the high 2s or low 3s for the 79 version of the pedal. So I just really recommend that sort of thing to a lot of people, budget conscious or not. I just think if you can get the exact same tone in a newer, more reliable package for significantly cheaper, why not? And then I think there's just a ton of great boutique companies out there like yourself that are making different, kind of a different take on things. Really, obviously, the quality is stepped up, and I think those are great options too. And I have a lot of that stuff as well. So it just depends on what you're after and what your price points are. But I think the tone is out there for very low price, really, in most cases.
I agree, man. And it's just so nice that, I don't ever want music to be something that like people can't afford to get into. I'm really happy that like another one you've done lately is you did some demos on the Epiphone G400, and I think there's a bunch of people out there that are just so happy to kind of have these more affordable items validated by like someone as well known as you, so that now everybody knows that like you don't got to go into debt to play Doom music or whatever.
Those guitars are sweet, man. Like, I mean, I love that gold G400. I fucking love it. And the white one that I've played in this past week, Sweet Leaf Lesson, that 2011 with P90s, it's fucking killer. What's funny, I saw, or I had made a post about it and included a photo that someone sent me of just playing it, or playing his 2011 Epiphone from earlier this year in April. He's got a black one with P90s. And someone who was at that show was like, holy fuck, that was the best show I've ever been to. His tone was incredible,
really?
Blah, blah, blah. And I think I commented back, like, must have been that $300 Epiphone, you know,
yeah, right.
Link or whatever.
Right.
But, you know, a lot of the tone, it does come, in my opinion, the tone comes from writing memorable songs in a lot of cases.
I agree.
You know, that's just what I think guitar tone, obviously there's a tonal aspect. You're not going to write a Doom song, modern Doom song, playing a Stratocaster through a clean twin reverb, but if you can get in the ballpark and you can write some fucking good songs, your tone's going to sound good.
And I know you've talked to some professional musicians like Garrett from Windhand, where it didn't seem like they were as obsessed about gear as some of the rest of us are.
Yeah, and especially, you know, I think if you look at the pedal boards of a lot of these touring guys that we all really like, it just depends, you know, what era they're in. But if you look back, like, I was a huge fan of High on Fire in the early days when Matt was showing up with one or no pedals and just bi-amping a couple amps and plugging in his Les Paul and sounded fucking incredible.
Yeah.
You know? And likewise, a lot of the bands that I grew up listening to used very minimalistic setups. And still, some of these bands that are around today are not using that complicated of a rig in terms of pedals, and still sounding great. You know, like Garrett's rig is pretty simple. You know, when you just look at what he's got on the floor.
Yeah, it's always cool when you look down, go to a show of a band you really like, and you just look down and you see a Big Muff or a Rat like taped down to the floor or something.
Right.
So speaking of all these different cool pedals you've messed with this year and your guitars, a couple folks on Instagram were hoping that I would ask you about what your favorite guitar is. And I'm going to give you two favorite guitars because I can already think of one that I think you're going to say. But that way maybe you could do like a higher end one and a more affordable one or something.
Yeah, so my personal favorite guitar, it's a tough one for me because I've got kind of three core real favorites, but my favorite is probably the First Act double cut that I have. It's an extremely unique guitar. It was very hard to track down. I tracked it down somewhat after the custom shop had closed, and obviously wanting to get this guitar came from Matt playing it again around that Death Is This Communion era of High on Fire and the early Sleep Reunion stuff. And I was able to track down a couple of them, and I sold one of them that wasn't quite as nice. And they're all kind of very unique guitars, like each one was different. So the one I sold had a thinner body and thinner neck and just didn't feel as good as the one that I kept.
Gotcha.
But that one, people see it. It looks like a Les Paul custom kind of thing. It's all black with like white binding, and it's got the split anvil inlays with the ebony fingerboard and stuff. It's an awesome guitar. It's kind of this. To me, it feels more like a Les Paul than an SG, but it's more like a Les Paul double cut. But it's got the aggressive horn on it, so it kind of does look like an SG. But
yeah,
it sustains like nothing else. Like I've owned a lot of killer Les Pauls and whatnot, and I've never had a guitar that can kind of compete with that in terms of sustain for whatever the reason. It's got a huge neck, like a 59 style Les Paul neck, big baseball bat, really thick body. It's a heavy guitar. Great guitar. Really cool, really unique piece. The
inlays on that, I think, are the coolest thing I've ever seen anywhere.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's a shame that they didn't produce a whole lot of them. They're extremely rare to find. I've been watching the internet for them for probably 7 years, and you just don't see them come up very often.
Damn.
They vary in price significantly. There's one on Reverb right now that was owned by Brent Hines. It's a double neck with, one of the necks is a 12 string and one is a 6, but it's super expensive. I think they started it at $5K and dropped it to $4 maybe right now or something like that, but expensive anyways. But I do love that thing, and it's a guitar that will stay with me forever, I'm sure.
I know there's some people scratching their heads right now saying First Act. I was like, a Walmart guitar, isn't it? But they had a custom shop.
Yeah, they really did it right. They were almost too early, They were almost just a bit too early with it. Because they had some really cool designs, and they got them in the hands of some really cool artists that were still a little too underground at the time, maybe. Like Brent Hines was playing them, Pike was playing them, Jeff Matz was playing a bass, guys in Baroness were playing them, Ilessa. They showed up a lot of places, but all these bands at the time, we're talking 7 years ago, were still 7, 8, 9 years ago, were still kind of small, and the internet hadn't blown them up to the I guess notoriety that they all have today. But the custom shop was in Boston. It was run by some guys, ex-Gibson custom shop guys, so they knew what they were doing. Really nice work. I had one of the basses and a couple of the guitars. They were really cool.
So,
and then I guess you asked on the low end.
Yeah, on the lower end.
The lower price point. So right now, the 3 lower end guitars I have are those SGs. One is a made in Korea 1993 G400, which is the same guitar just used in the early days of Electric Wizard. That guitar is super cool. I think it's cool because it's got nice rosewood. They were using nicer rosewood back in those days. It's got the dot inlays, black speed knobs, small guard. It's got nice bevels. Like, it looks like an SG kind of should. The cherry is really nice. It's really cool. The electronics are garbage. Just pretty bad, older Korean stuff. But it just it feels right. It plays really good. That's one of my favorites. But those other 2 SGs I talked about, all these guitars are $300 or less, like $250, $300. It's just, they're killer guitars for that price. I play them a ton, and I've got much nicer stuff in terms of price.
Yeah, right. And I know one of those I think you took it to your local luthier, and he did a little setup on it, and for like a $300 guitar and throw a $125 setup on it, it felt really nice, right?
Yes, and that actually, I had bought a couple of the early '90s made in Korea SGs, and it needed it was all messed up. Like, someone had messed with it in terms of all the wiring and whatnot. And it was like that when I got it, but I did have it rewired and set up and everything, and it came out amazing.
Nice, man.
Like, amazing, just really, really good. And I think a lot of these things, usually I'm not going to mess with the nut. Like, if I want to put some real heavy gauge strings on it that are going to require the nut slots to be adjusted, I'll take it to my luthier, and he always does a great job. Like, I just had that gold one set up that way when I got it, and that thing plays great. Really happy with it. It looks amazing. I mean, it's just, I've always loved cool that aesthetic of the gold guitar with the black plastics. Kind of like, you can see here and there, you'll see old Les Pauls, old gold top Les Pauls. They were more rare, but they were done that way with all the black pickup rings and the black poker chip and the black pick guard with the gold. And I just think it looks awesome. And that thing for they show up on Amazon for $329, and I think they're regular price like $419 or something. I mean, it's a great guitar for that price. I think there's one for sale locally here actually right now.
After you were posting about them, man, I had to stop myself from buying one. Especially if it was like $329 shipped to your door or something. But
yeah, and it's Amazon, right? If you think it sucks, you send it back for free oftentimes. So it's like, you can't go wrong with a lot of that stuff on Amazon, And again, it's like, you can get a lot of these common, like the rat reissues or the muff reissues on Amazon, and you can just buy them. And if you think they suck, just send them back.
Yeah. So it's been a wild year for you, man. I mean, it's amazing to see how much ground you've covered, of how much content you've made this year. I believe, I lost track of how many videos you have on your channel, but you've been putting out one gear demo or lesson every single week, all year long, posting to Instagram little lesson clips and gear demos at least once a day, if not up to 4 times a day. So, kind of a 2-part question here. How do you keep track of your schedule, man? I mean, you do so much, and I also want to know what's coming up next year, because I have a feeling that you're just warming up.
Yeah, man, it's been a crazy year. I work a lot, I have a full-time job, I've got a family, and so I work my normal 9 to 5, and I hang out with my family kind of before work and after work. And then a lot of my work here for the channel happens between 8 p.m. and 2 in the morning, at least especially in terms of lesson production and video production. And a lot of post-planning and whatnot can kind of happen very late. But it's just a lot of effort and a lot of desire to do it that keeps me going. I think I just hit my 103rd video on YouTube this past upload, which was cool. I kind of didn't even realize I had passed 100.
Yeah,
but I saw it somewhere. It popped up somewhere, and I was like, "Wow, that's kind of neat."
What's your motivation?
Like you do 100 videos. It's just what I love to do, and I think it's being able to do something you love to do and reach an audience and help people, and maybe share some of what I've learned over the years. I'm far from being an expert, but I've learned a bit, and I'm happy to share it. And if it helps people, great. That certainly, as I've said before, keeps me going. But it comes down to, I love guitars and I love gear and I love this type of music. And so it gets me into doing something I love on a frequent basis with a purpose to it. And, people seem to dig it. So I'm going to keep crushing it, and keep going forward with it.
It's very inspiring to see, man. I know, I try to put out a lot of media also, and half the time I feel like I'm just trying to keep up with you. Or it's like I might wake up and I'm feeling a little lazy or something, don't want to do a video or a podcast or whatever, and I see you've already done a lesson, a gear demo, made 4 posts, you've been on Twitter, you're making videos on TikTok and everything in between, man. What's coming up next?
Yeah, well, likewise, dude, you inspire me in the same way. And I think, I truly do value your friendship, and, I know people think we're the same person, but we're not, but we are good friends. And I watch what you've done this past year as well. And it's very inspirational to me. And I think, helps keep me going. And I see someone like you just absolutely crushing it. And it's very motivational for me as well.
So on that thought of kind of like, I think people are kind of catching on to that one, that me and you talk a bit behind the scenes, and it's really just like a group motivational thing. Like, I want to see you do well and be happy, and I think you want the same for me. And it's really important, I think, for everyone to try to find people in their life, even if it's just one friend via Instagram. I mean, we're on different sides of the country, and we're always helping each other out. So, I think it's important for people to keep in mind that, like, having a positive friendship with someone where I've never felt in competition with you, man. It's just like the competition is you do good, I do good, high five,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just not how I feel, right? It's just, I really enjoy having someone to be able to chat with and who's doing the same thing and going through the same things, and the highs and the lows, right? It's tough. It's a lot of work.
It is tough, man. Yeah.
But it's a lot of fun too. So I definitely think a positive influence in someone to keep you going and keep you in the right mindset, when things don't go exactly or aren't going exactly how you want them to. It's super important to have those kind of people in your life, so I think find someone who's a positive influence and hang on to them and be the same thing for them.
I think that's awesome, man. So I'm thinking about how busy you are as a person with your job and personal life, and then this amazing, I think it's a very large and impressive body of work that you've done this year. imagine you were starting a band, or like you're someone else on Instagram right now. We see all these bands out there that are trying to promote themselves, or like, be professional musicians. If you were doing that today, or you like, I don't want to say like what advice you would have for them, because I want to know what you would do personally. If you were running a band today and you wanted to grow it fast and get recognized, what would you be doing? What would that look like?
So I'll attack it from what I know, more so on this side of things, because obviously you have to be a good band. You have to have dedicated individuals who are talented, who can write really strong songs. You got to be willing to get out there in your local scene and play a lot and be at shows and show your face and in the community. I think that stuff's all super important, but there's so much that can be done on social media. If I were to attack it, I would almost attack it the way I've already done. I would consider demoing the gear I have. I would be on all the platforms as much as possible. All these social media pipes are all just distribution platforms where we can put out our content and put it out there for the world and let the market be the judge, right? And so you don't have to find a label. You don't have to, get all this external promotion. That matters less and less these days in a way. So I think being present in the communities online, on forums, on Facebook, in the groups, the Facebook groups that are related to your genre, and obviously just in the online communities that are formed on all of these various social platforms, but also considering that you need to be putting out content if you want to attract attention. You need to be commenting on other people's stuff and interacting and engaging with people, but also putting out your own content that's valuable and entertaining. So I would consider, I get asked all the time, are you in a band? I want to check out your band. Are you in a band? But I'm really not. All of my time goes into the channel and into the content. With the way my life works, I really wouldn't have time for both. But I do think a lot of traction could be made, if you did start a gear demo channel, or if you did teach song lessons, or if you even taught your own riffs, or just got on social media and taught some guitar riffs or lessons. I think it's a great way to grow. And I don't think really many people leverage it. Even these professional musicians don't leverage it to the way they could. These guys who have touring bands, if they would get on social media more and interact more, and even playing and showing some of their riffs and stuff, these bands that have a following, have amassed a bit of a following, if you got on, man, and did that on a regular basis, I wouldn't want to see what would happen.
Yeah, they'd blow up really big.
Yeah.
Something I'm thinking of is that, maybe 15 years ago or something, it used to be like you got to be a good band, and then a label basically did all of the work that you just talked about, and pretty much all of the work that you do to promote your brand Does It Doom, like making videos, making audio, posting photos, talking to people. And it just doesn't seem like it's an option anymore to wait for that to happen. You basically just have to become your own media company. That's what it seems like. Like, we all have a worldwide broadcast station in our pocket called the iPhone.
Absolutely. It's incredible. There is no the middleman is gone, right? The internet is the middleman. The audience decides. The distribution platforms are free. And that's just organically free, organic reach. Some are better than others, and you can still pay for advertising if you'd like, but the distribution is generally free, and you just have to make enough content to fill all the pipes on these various platforms such that you can garner the attention that you deserve. And, once you've got the attention, that's kind of the key, right?
Totally. How many times a day should these bands be posting?
Yeah, you hear the classic stuff. You can't post too much, right? So you're talking 30, 50, 100 times a day. I think some of those goals seem unreasonable, but when you combine tweets and Instagram stories and Instagram wall posts and Facebook posts, you can get there quicker than you think. But I love when I see bands do some good memes and stuff, but I wouldn't, be only doing that type of stuff. But, some memes can blow up, man. You make something like that's really entertaining, or just like strikes the right nerve with everybody. You can get a lot of attention that way. But I think just being on there frequently, getting your face on camera. I always tell people ask me about this stuff often, right? And I think being willing to put your face on camera, talk to people, fuck fear, just do it. We're all scared, in the beginning. It's not, I think people sometimes see it and think it's easy, or they see the final product, they see the edited video and think it's super easy, where you don't fuck up at all or whatever. But you and I have shot plenty of videos. We fuck up a lot. Like, I don't have to see you do it. I know,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It's tough.
If it weren't for editing, my videos would not be nearly the quality they are. So it's just getting over those insecurities, not worrying about what people think of you, not worrying about what people think of any of your work, good or bad, and just doing it and putting out content that is going to entertain or educate your audience.
Do you think that a lot of these people aren't sharing this info or playing on camera because they're afraid of the criticisms they might get online?
I think to some degree, often. I think sometimes people think like, well, who am I? Nobody's going to care.
Yeah.
But I think, society has proven otherwise, right? Like everybody cares. That's like what entertainment is today. So I think getting over those insecurities and not worrying so much what anybody thinks of you or your content. Some people will like it, some people won't. You'll get those thumbs downs. You'll get those guys coming on and leaving negative or just shitty comments on your stuff. Whatever, it doesn't matter. Happens to me all the time. Don't care.
Yep.
It's not going to stop me from doing my next video. I can tell you that.
And I'll be the first to admit that when I started off trying to get on camera and speak and be more public, I was nervous about what people would say and their reaction. And letting go of that has been a big help. But I just want people to know that, like, even folks that look like they're very comfortable doing it have maybe not always been that way.
Yeah, I'm not comfortable still. Like, I'm a pretty introverted, quiet. I'm an introverted, quiet individual, generally. And so getting on camera and being that guy, takes some effort, but I want to be entertaining. I want to put out a good product. And it's more important to me, the delivery of the message is more important than my own, insecurities. So I just do it, It's like, I don't know, if you write songs or you do any piece of art, I think at the end of the day, you're never quite pleased with it, or it's never quite finished, or at least that's always how it's always been for me. And this feels very much the same way. I finish a video, I'm not quite happy, like I could have done X, Y, Z better, but at the end of the day, done is better than perfect. Fuck it, it's good. I know I put a lot of work into it always, and I'll put it out there and see what the market thinks, what the audience thinks, and let their reaction be my guide. And if people have some criticisms and they're valid, I'll take them into account, and I'll move on to next week. We'll try it again.
Because that's what matters.
It takes reps.
Yeah, most definitely. It seems like we judge ourselves way more than we should sometimes, but what's really important is, like, do other people like the lesson? Yes, they did. They got something from it. So they don't care that maybe I did a sound demo and I missed a note or something, for example.
Yeah, I mean, you're playing guitar online, right? You're always going to get your G strings out of tune, dude. You're always going to get your off tempo, dude. But go check out those dudes' accounts who leave those comments. Next time someone drops some shit like that on your account, go to their account and check it out
and see that they have zero.
See what they do.
Posted.
See what they're doing with their life.
Jack shit usually. By the way, that video, I saw a comment on one of your videos of your G string was out of tune, and I listened. I was like, his G string is so in tune, and I know you tune your guitar before you start.
Yeah, I mean, but it happens too. I think there's been times in I was doing some live lesson, and the G string got out of tune. I'm not, and the way I was monitoring, I didn't quite hear it. But whatever. I'm teaching a riff, man. Like, learn the riff.
Yeah.
If you want to play it, great. If you don't, great. I don't know.
That dude is yelling play Freebird right now at someone at a bar.
Yeah, again, like I would do anything to have somebody teach me these songs when I was a kid, It would have been so cool. So I'm just grateful, at the end of the day, the negative is just far overshadowed by the positive. It's just not even close to being the same. As humans, I think we can easily focus on the negative. But if you go to one of your videos that has like 400 likes and 3 dislikes, who gives a fuck?
Yeah.
Right? I don't know. It's just something you got to do, and you got to get over it.
Definitely.
I think it's very common and you see people progress and get much better, and people you can continue to look up to, and you continue to hone your craft and get better at it. It's funny how the music side of it, which is the inspiration for all of this, but there's so much more to it in terms of the nuances,
So it's about to be the new year, man. I just want to wrap up this interview with asking you a little bit about what's going on. I've been noticing you got these really cool new guitar straps you've been putting out and pedal boards, and me and you've been talking about all these new lessons you're hoping to do next year. Can you just give us what are we looking forward to, man? It's about to be 2020, and I know that you're just warming up, so all of us can't wait to see what's about to happen.
Yeah, so right now I've had a ton of requests to print more hats and do more shirts and stuff like that. So I've got a whole bunch of that stuff at the printer. We'll have it back hopefully by the end of the week. Hoping to get it up and out there for everybody here. Hopefully this weekend, if not next weekend, sometime soon. But I've got a whole bunch of stuff, new stuff, different stuff, and I'm really excited about that. I have been doing custom straps with Tom's Vintage Straps out of France. Super great guy to work with. And that really came out of just being a really big fan of his product. I've always loved those old vintage hippie weave stuff. And I felt like, I've got a few old vintage ones, and I felt like his were, there's lots of companies doing it, but when I saw his, I just thought they were the most true to what the original stuff is, while being, using kind of more modern, I guess, materials in a way, but all the weave fabric is all from the 60s and 70s or what have you. But yeah. So I've just done some straps, and we made them really long, and we picked a super cool print that I'm still in love with, and I've done a few runs of those. I think they're like 68-inch long straps, and he does a really nice job with vegan tanned leather ends and embossing the logo in the ends and whatnot. So those have been really cool. We've got another batch of those, hopefully mid-December. That Pedalboard deal was something that just, one of my very best friends here, that we've been just friends forever, he does woodworking, and I approached him about making me a pedalboard because I had just had something in mind that I wanted to do. He and I are both engineers, and he's a woodworker, and so we worked together on this design, put it together, ended up building one, and I'd been using it and started to get a ton of people asking about it and where can they get one, where can they find it. So we decided to build a few, and so we've got a small batch coming out, one run in purple, one run in like purple elephant Tolex, and one run in sort of matte amp green basket weave Tolex.
Nice.
Hoping to have those out middle of the month, but it's super cool, came out really awesome. Really excited about letting people have those since there's been so much interest in grabbing one. And so that's what's on the deck for the new year here, along with just the weekly, lesson content and whatnot. And then, later down the line into next year, I'm looking at doing some more premium technique-based lessons, longer form probably, more in-depth into, I've had a lot of requests to do, theory lessons or lead lessons and just stuff that's going to be a little more in-depth than a standard YouTube video. And so I'm excited to do those things and just excited for where things are going next year for sure.
That's all exciting stuff, man. So where should folks go to get more info or purchase the straps and the pedal boards?
Yeah, so my website for purchasing, you can always go to www.doesitdoom.com/shop. And right now it is empty, unfortunately, but it should be back up and running here towards the end of, or at least the middle of this month, and hopefully the end of this week. And then to find anything related to my content, you can just look up Does It Doom, at Does It Doom on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Does It Doom on YouTube, and of course the Does It Doom podcast on Apple Podcast and Spotify.
All sounds good, man. And I'm going to be watching your Instagram page so that I can keep an eye out for when the new straps are going to be available, the pedal boards. And I can't wait to see all of the new lessons. And of course, check out more of your Does It Doom podcast episode.
Awesome, man. I really appreciate you having me on here, Jason. Thank you so much.
I appreciate you taking the time to do it, Steve. And just really appreciate everything that you've been doing for everybody out in the world in the music community. I know I'm not the only one that feels that way. So anybody listening that wants to check out more of what Steve's up to, be sure you head on over to his Instagram page at Does It Doom, his YouTube channel, Does It Doom, or Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and pretty much every platform you can think of. So I appreciate you all taking the time to listen to the Fuzz Life podcast. I will leave links to Steve's website and different social media pages so you can keep up with him. Be sure you check out his YouTube channel and check out some lessons. I was just sitting on the couch watching TV last night, watching Little Stranger Things and working on my Dragonaut riff on my phone while sitting there messing with some guitar. So he's got a ton of good lessons out there and gear demos. Again, I'm Jason Johnson from Fuzzlord Effects. You've been listening to the Fuzz Life podcast, and I really appreciate you taking the time to listen. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a rating, share it with a friend if you like it, and keep up with me on a daily at the @Fuzzlord Effects Instagram page.